Money FM 89.3, best of breakfast. Mind your business, only on Money FM 89.3.
That's right. It's time to mind your business with Audrey Seek and Ahmad Akhtar. Now, AI is everywhere these days, right?
Is it?
Yeah, it's in our headlines, powering our tools, and transforming the way we live and work. But here's the kicker. For all of the hype, most enterprise AI projects don't actually succeed. In fact, NetApp's latest AI Space Race survey found that while 81% of organizations are piloting or scaling AI, only 15% are achieving real success.
And according to them, the problem isn't a lack of ambition, it's a lack of alignment. In case that isn't enough of a wake-up call, a sobering report by MIT's Media Lab found that despite $30 to $40 billion in enterprise investment in generative AI pilot failure is officially the norm, with 95% of corporate AI initiatives showing zero return.
Zero return. So what does it take to get this right? What does a successful AI infrastructure look like? And what are the red flags that warn of failure?
Time to find out with Russell Fishman, Global Head of AI Solutions at NetApp. Good morning, Russell.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Ahmad and Audrey.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. You look like a numbers guy, so I'm going to throw you some numbers, all right?
Oh, no.
A 2024 report by McKinsey found that 60% of enterprises in APAC are experimenting with Gen AI, yet fewer than 10% have embedded it into core workflows. The World Economic Forum estimates AI could add nearly 16 trillion USD to global GDP by 2030, but only if enterprises manage to scale responsibly. So first things first, where do you see the state of AI adoption globally today? Let's look beyond the headlines. What's the reality on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're going through various evolutions, let's say, of AI. I think most folks actually don't realize that predictive AI has been around for many years, right? This isn't something that's new. It's actually impacting you today. You're interacting with it. You may just not realize it, right? Predictive AI is really more traditional, what they call machine learning. What we've seen, of course, with the emergence of generative AI, I think most famously ChatGPT. It's been 2.5 years since ChatGPT came to the fore. I kind of think about it like the iPhone moment for AI. Right? There were smartphones before iPhones, but it was the iPhone that kind of brought it into the general public consciousness. And it's the same with ChatGPT. But ChatGPT opened up this kind of new frontier for folks to start thinking about how can they use AI. The problem has been is that, ultimately, does it actually deliver any ROI? Is there actually business process improvement that comes out of it? And that's really been the challenge for most organizations.
Okay, so let's zoom into Singapore here. Some observers say that Singapore risks becoming a quote-unquote AI demo city. So lots of pilots, but not enough scaled adoption. From your vantage point, Russell, how does Singapore compare on the global AI stage? Do you agree with that view?
Yeah, I don't think it's specific to Singapore, to be honest with you, Audrey. I think the reality is that we see a very similar trend occurring all over the place. And, it's an interesting thing to think that when you go about wanting to trial or test something like AI and you set yourself some specific goals and you can achieve those goals and still not get to something that actually delivers ROI. And there's nowhere else in technology that we kind of accept that sort of outcome. I mean, it's a pretty weird thing that we would have a 15% success rate, as you were talking about, Emma, before. There's no other place in business we accept that sort of thing. So I don't think Singapore is unique in that respect. But I think what's happening is that organizations and enterprises are starting to think about what does production look like rather than just going ahead and trying some stuff out. And that's honestly what we've been seeing. It's boards, it's C-level folks who've been saying, listen, don't be constrained by the typical enterprise requirements for bringing something to production. It's governance, it's security. It's like, avoid all that stuff because that's going to hold you back. But that's also the stuff that is going to be the difference between, hey, I had something that worked great in a POC versus a proof of concept versus something that actually is something I can put into production.
Right.
Now, Russell, you've been at the helm of hundreds of projects, if not more, across the world. Let's tap into your experience. What are the most common pitfalls or red flags that cause AI initiatives to fail? Why do so many projects stall at the pilot stage?
Yeah, I think firstly, a little plug for NetApp, data is a big problem. I have to, come on. I know you guys are smiling at me, but listen, data genuinely is a real problem here. In fact, one of the things that we've noticed is that the way it's termed in the entire sort of market is that it's more of a GPU issue. congratulations to folks like NVIDIA as terming it as an NVIDIA problem, as a GPU problem. But at the end of the day, think of GPUs as really just an engine, and you need fuel to run the engine. It's all about how organizations match their data to the GPUs to actually deliver AI outcomes. What I would say is a kind of an interesting thing for you. What we've seen across those organizations is a trend amongst highly regulated industries like financial services, healthcare, life sciences. They're the ones that actually are making a significant amount of progress in AI.
Okay.
And the reason for that is very simple. They're regulated industries. They have to understand their data. If you understand your data, you're in a much better position to take advantage of AI.
Okay, so you're saying that the regulated industries stand out as, role models in scaling AI responsibly and effectively. What about the sectors that tend to get it wrong more often than others? Do you have any input on that?
It's really everyone else. I mean, it all comes down to data, right? Where you have industries that don't intrinsically have to understand that data very well, they're the ones that tend to get in trouble. And listen, we have obviously some pretty specific global approaches to data privacy and regulation, GDPR and all the various forms of GDPR globally. What we're starting to see is the implementation of governance policies in places like Singapore. So I noted that Singapore has just introduced a framework for Gen AI. And by the way, I have a sort of maybe a counterintuitive view of regulation. Regulation actually helps accelerate AI. There's very few places that anyone's going to say regulation is actually going to speed up business.
Yeah.
But the problem is if you don't know what good looks like, and let's be clear, people don't know what good looks like in AI. If you don't know what good looks like in AI, you're not going to necessarily take that risk. If we start saying, hey, listen, this is what society accepts as, responsible use of AI, then you know what? I feel comfortable about making those investments.
Yeah, I want to pick up on a point you raised earlier on in that answer, which is that companies understand data. What does it actually mean to understand data? What does that entail?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at the end of the day, data is everywhere. I mean, if you think about the value that an organization has, there's a lot of intrinsic value just based on the data that they have, right? But what does that mean? So data comes in lots of forms. There's sort of structured data, which is sort of more databases and that sort of stuff. Unstructured would be like files and objects. I don't want to get too technical here, but essentially that's just a bunch of data that isn't necessarily understood where it is. It might not be in one place. Folks may not understand what the nature of the data is, so kind of what actually the data consists of. Could it consist of, personal information? Could it consist of data that can be used in certain contexts? Or, as you start thinking about all this, if AI success is predicated on bringing that data together for AI, then if you don't understand where that data is, you won't understand how to use it. So regulated industries ultimately have to understand it because they're legally required to. So when they actually call on, hey, how do I use this data? Which data, what types of data can I use legally in certain contexts? They understand it. It's something that a lot of organizations have to go through that journey first.
Yeah, I think something that runs parallel to understanding data is the hidden costs of storing and processing AI scale data, not just financially, but environmentally as well. Do you think enterprises underestimate those costs?
Yeah, I think they do. And there's going to be a reckoning on the environmental front. We talked about that 85% of these projects that never make it to production. When you go through the process of preparing data and let's say training a model, which is typically what people use GPUs for, you actually go into essentially environmental debt is how I would describe it. There's actually a lot of energy expended in doing things like training, which is fine if you get the payoff at the end of it, right? But the problem is if these projects don't get to production, you've spent that environmental, the energy, the greenhouse gases, et cetera, but you haven't actually had the opportunity to take any ROI out of it. So I think we as an industry have to get past this idea that 85% of projects failing is okay. It's not okay. Yeah. And there are just multiple issues around it.
All right, so let's talk about the solutions here. If you were advising a company in Singapore, let's say, who's stuck in pilot mode, what concrete steps should they take to move towards scaling responsibly?
Yeah, I think firstly it's don't, we were talking earlier about avoiding some of those traditional structures that sit inside organizations that help take projects into production. You can't avoid them. I think that we've been seeing that a lot in organizations. They've been sort of avoiding the IT folks. I know there's nothing sexy about IT, I get that, but they are the difference between trying something out and actually having something that is productionized and, more importantly, integrated into core business processes, right? So you start to include the IT folks, the chief data officers, the chief security officers in those conversations, include them early, make sure you're planning for production, not just some POC, which is often where folks that's as far as their eyes, their thoughts can take them. I would also say that where we've seen the most success from an ROI perspective is not in general productivity enhancements. So if you think about, you see like Microsoft Copilot and that sort of stuff, it's a great solution, right? But the problem with it is it's kind of a general productivity solution, and it's not entirely clear that organizations are able to realize any ROI out of it. Well, what's the impact of it? Okay, it makes people more effective. Does it actually save any money? So what we're seeing is back-end processes. Those are the ones that seem to attract the highest return.
Okay. Yeah, Russell, beyond tech, culture and leadership matter as well. So I want to double down on the point you made about CSOs, CDOs, and the like being at the forefront of change. What kind of role do boards and executives play in making or breaking AI projects? And what are some early warning signs leaders should look out for to indicate that an investment is either going to work or is off track?
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, I think that there's been this race to AI, and boards feel almost like they're going to be left out if they don't make some sort of investment. So I think when you're in that mindset, you're typically not thinking logically about what ROI really means. You're potentially moving ahead too quickly just so you can say, hey, to the board, hey, I've moved ahead on AI. Look, we've made some progress here. So I think a more sort of thoughtful planning process is part of what we're seeing. But I think the most important thing that we're seeing in the industry is that there is a move to a greater set of sort of matured, repeatable use cases. So rather than organizations starting off and saying, hey, I'm going to build my own thing every single time, they're saying, hey, listen, actually, I don't need to. There's a use case I can buy off the shelf, a commercial off the shelf product. I can just implement it. That's how most of IT works. This is not unusual. I don't know why AI would be any different. So we're starting to see that evolution, that maturity occur, and organizations will just be able to buy an outcome rather than have to go through the development process.
Okay, well, talking about evolution here, we are seeing such a fast-paced evolution and changes, when it comes to AI. So looking to the next 3 to 5 years, what do you think business leaders here in APAC, especially Singapore, have to do to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I mean, back to data. I think, this is the time of data governance and understanding your data in a way that organizations never really had to, especially those outside of regulated industries. So I would say you really need, organizations that don't have CDOs, they need to start establishing that function. They need to start really understanding their data in a way they never thought they had to previously, right? That's going to set them up to be able to take advantage of AI. But, I would say, you're looking for use cases where you can replace, honestly, you can replace not just human capital, but you can also improve the customer experience simultaneously, right? So where you get a benefit from a customer perspective and you get a benefit internally, those are the use cases that seem to be the ones that deliver the most value in the long run.
Are there any counterintuitive insights you've seen from companies that have actually scaled AI successfully?
Well, what I would say is that, it's not entirely obvious when organizations start as to where they want to be doing this work. I think that folks might look at the cloud and think the cloud is the right place to do it. They might think that on-premises is the right way to do it, right place to do it. What I would say is that you want to be pragmatic. What we don't know, and I listen, even someone that works in AI all the time, I don't know what the next 3 years in AI looks like.
Yeah.
And anyone who tells you they do is lying, right? I mean, it's moving so fast. It's a technological space where you move. So what you actually want to build is a lot of flexibility and adaptability in whatever plans you take on, so that as these new techniques and capabilities come out, you can take advantage of them.
Well, we may not know what AI is going to look like in 3 years. What we do know is that almost every company today says they're becoming AI first, or that they have intelligent data storage systems. So what are some of the hard truths that you see that will separate hype from real adoption?
Well, I think, again, it comes down to the need to understand your data, understand your use cases, again, align, your customer requirements with what you actually can build in terms of cost savings and ROI and what have you. Look, hype is building AI solutions that don't deliver that ROI. So you need to take a hard look at what is going to actually improve your business and put you in an improved competitive position, rather than something that just ticks a box for the board.
Yeah, well, understanding your data is the name of the game, and it's clear that scaling AI isn't just about ambition, it's about infrastructure, governance, and leadership all moving in sync. Russell, it was great chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Russell Fishman is the global head of AI solutions at NetApp. Stay with Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.